Hello everyone, my name is Awab Akib and today we'll be solving pre-release material of May-June 2022, paper 22. So this is going to be the last pre-release material ever dispatched because there have been changes to the syllabus of computer science now. So starting from next year, there won't be any pre-release material. The whole paper 2 would be unseen, just like section B of paper 2. So this is the last material we are going to solve today. Um, in its entirety, the tasks are pretty simple. You just need to understand the whole scenario once. So we are making a program for ticketing system for actually a wildlife park, and there are 5 types of tickets: adult, child, senior, family, and group. So family tickets it includes up to 5 people, so 2 adults and 3 children, and a group of 6 people. You're going to charge them per person. This is cost for one day, cost for 2 days, and then you are going to offer them attractions. Attractions are optional. So if anybody buys a ticket, you are going to show them this choice that if they want to buy an attraction or not. If they agree, then you are going to show them line feeding, penguin, or barbecue, and these are the respective prices. And at the end of the booking, you have to print the total cost and the details or the breakdown of the whole ticket. In task 1, you are simply going to display the options and the attractions, and you have to show the days available for the booking. And if you read the question properly, it shows that you are going to allow the user to print uh, or select a ticket for up to a week in advance. So you're going to allow pre-booking for up to 7 days. And then in the task 2, you're going to ask the user to actually uh, give the inputs, and then you have to find the cost, and then you have to give the breakdown of the ticket. And in task 3, you are to ensure that you are going to give the user the best price available. Here we are going to assume that the user is going to go for either a family or a group ticket if he or she has at least 5 or more people. Okay, so we are not going to deal with this scenario where the user individually adds 5 adults and 5 seniors. That will just complicate the code. So we'll go with the safe assumption here. Now on to the logic of the whole pre-release material. So I have written the Python code that I'll be sharing. I have written the pseudocode. This would also be shared, but first we need to look at the whole structure of this program, and other than that, you won't be able to understand it properly. And once again, you cannot memorize the code. It is practically impossible. The questions would be unseen, but they would definitely be related to this scenario. But at the same time, uh, you need to understand what is happening in this code, both in Python, both in pseudocode, so you can attempt any sort of question that comes in the exam. So I've written this uh, detailed structure of the code, which I have attempted in both Python and pseudocode. So I'll walk you through it. So by the way, this is dealing with all 3 tasks, task 1, 2, and 3. So I've done them all in one program. They're all interlinked, so we need to be very careful about what we're doing at the moment. So first of all, you are going to ask the user if they want to exit or not. So basically, we are putting this whole lengthy logic inside the while loop. So you'll give the option to user: do you want to repeat, yes or no, 1 or 0? I preferred using integer values because they're easier to type and because we can actually address the arrays directly. And this is a no-brainer that you can clearly see. Ticket type being one array with 5 elements, then cost for one day being another array with 5 elements, cost for 2 days with 5 elements with that is another array, then the attraction and cost per person. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arrays that you are going to use in this pre-release material. And please keep one thing in mind: we are going to link the arrays together using the relevant indices. So before I explain to you the logic of the program, this is the most important thing that you need to understand, which is that I'm keeping adult on index 0, then child at index 1, senior at index 2, family at index 3, and group at index 4. Um, each element in the array has a position, right? So that is what we call the index, and the plural becomes indices. And corresponding to that, I have this array called type counts, which is maintaining the count of each person. So if the adult ticket is bought 5 times, this count would change to 5. If the children ticket is bought 10 times, this would change to 10, and I'll keep on updating the values with every iteration of my loop. So you'll see in the program that I'll always be asking the user to enter the values in integer forms, and I'll explain you why. So when I run the program, it's going to load. So when the user would select adult, this would be index 0 of ticket type, and then okay, so I'll just show you directly. So I enter a day between 1 and 31, and then it prints me the next 7 days available for pre-booking. I enter one of the day from above. Then it shows 1 day booking or 2 day booking. I go for 1 day booking. Then it says option 0 to 4. Now this is the main part. So if I enter 0, it would correspond to adult, 1 for child, so on and so forth. I explained. Now the reason why am I doing this is because using the index or using the integer value that the user inputs, I'll address the array directly. So if the user says ticket input is of senior, so the user would enter 2. Now this is my mapping, right? So when I'll do print type counts index 2, this would correspond to the count of the total tickets for seniors. So this is the direct mapping that we're going to use to solve this program, and this is the most important part of this pre-release material. All right, there is nothing. So these are two independent arrays which have they have nothing in common. There is no direct mapping, but this is how we can do it. I can say that whatever the index of one array is, whatever the values are at certain index, I'll put relevant values on the same index in another array, right? So the same case applies here. Day 1 cost 20. So this is, look at the mapping. When I print the day 1 cost of index 0, that would print me the cost of one adult. When I print the count index 0, that would print me the total count of adult tickets bought. And when I print index 0 of ticket type, it will print me the adult. Similarly for attraction, if I say index 1, then it shows penguin feeding. Attraction cost index 1, it prints me the cost of penguin feeding, and attraction count for index 1, it prints me the count of penguin feeding that has been done totally. All right. So if I show you the program running, I go for adult and I say I want to buy tickets for 5 adults and I want attractions. I'll enter maybe penguin feeding, and it calculates the total cost. Here I enter -1 and the program ends. So you are free to experiment with the code however you want. This was just a quick test run, okay? And in the end, I'm printing the details. I'm showing that there were 5 adult tickets and there was no other ticket, and then there were 5 penguin feeding attractions that were bought and the total price of the ticket. Now going back to the structure, once you've seen the execution, the structure would be even more clearer. So I'm asking the user to enter day for pre-booking, then I'm going to print the 7 days available. So you need to keep the logic in mind that if the user enters 24 and if you have to print the next 7 days, then after 31, you'll reset the count to 1, okay? Similarly, you'll ask the user to enter day 1 or day 2, and then you'll ask the user to enter options between 0, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Then if the option is 0, you'll ask the user to enter the adults count and add that many adults in the type counts 0. Now what am I doing here is simply when the user here enters that I'll get tickets for 5 adults, so I'm adding 5 to the 0th index of my type counts array, which is nothing except it's the array that is storing counts of each of these entities, okay? Each of these ticket entities for adult, for child, for senior, etc., etc. Now, if the option is 1, then here is something that you need to take care of. If you look at the pre-release material, it says one child, an adult may bring up to 2 children. So we have to put some sort of validation check. So here you'll first check if there are any adult tickets that have been bought yet. If there are no adult tickets yet, you have to print an error, right? So here, this is what I'm doing. I'm checking if the type counts index 0. Again, what is type counts index 0? It is storing the count of adults in the array. I've intentionally left spaces. You don't need to leave the spaces. This is just to show you the arrays more conveniently. So if it is less than 0, then it says or equal to 0, you cannot buy a ticket without an adult. So here the user has gone for the ticket of a child. Otherwise, you are going to say max children allowed is equal to type count 0 into 2. This is going to print the maximum number of children that are allowed with n number of adults, because one adult can bring up to 2 children, right? So how many adults, whatever the count is, you'll just simply multiply it by 2. That would be the maximum count of children. And then you'll ask the user to enter the children count. And while children count is less than the maximum allowed, is more than the maximum children allowed, so you are going to keep on repeating this over and over again, right? Actually, this should be all right. So while the total number of children that are allowed with n number of adults, if it is greater than the maximum number of children allowed, you are just going to ask the user to print to input the value again, because it is not allowed. It is an invalid value. You cannot. So let's say if there are 4 adults, they can only bring up to 8 children. So if the user enters 20, then this would be shown, and you'll ask the user to input the value again. And here on index 1 of type counts, I simply add the child count, which is again the number of children tickets that are bought in this iteration. So what will happen? You'll go to the first index of type counts, and if 5 children got tickets, then you'll just simply put 5 here. Okay, so with every passing booking, we are simply incrementing our arrays. Now, the same process for senior. I won't get into the detail. Now, this is the real thing. This is the part where the user has to the user has to choose between a family or a group of 6 tickets. So this is where a little bit of logic has to be taken care of, because things might get tricky here. Now, if I show you the structure here, so if the option is either 3 or 4, ask the user to input total number of tickets, right? Now, if the count is more than 6, add that many tickets to the type count 4. Again, because a group is only possible if there are at least 6 people in it. So if the user enters more than 6 tickets or at least 6, you are simply going to update the value of type counts index 4, which is corresponding to group 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, in Python, the indices start from 0, and pseudocode, they can start from 0 or 1. So if in exam they say start the index from 1, you have to just change these values from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then ask the user to input values from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well. Alright, so now the user is going to choose between a family ticket or the group ticket. This logic is basically corresponding to the task 3, because here we have to make sure that we offer the user alternative price. Now, what does this mean? This means that you are going to ask the user to input family or group, right? Now, if the user goes for family ticket, you still have to calculate price for a group. And if the user goes for a group of, let's say, 10 people, you are still going to calculate the family tickets price for 10 people. All right? If you look at the example given here above, so for example, buying 2 family tickets is better than a group ticket for a group of 10. So if you are going to go for a group of 10, it will cost you 150, and if you are going to go for a group of 10 with up to 4 adults and 6 children, that will simply cost you $120. All right, so 150 and 120. 120 is cheaper, so the user has to be presented with this alternative. This is what we're going to do in task 3, but the implementation of task 3 has to come in this stage where we're taking the inputs. So I'll just explain the logic here first. Alright, so I explained this part. Now, if the option is 3, so if the user enters for a family ticket, ask the user to input total number of family tickets needed, and then you add that many tickets to the type count 3. What is type count 3? Again, it is simply corresponding to the number of family tickets bought in this array. Alright. Initially, all of them are 0, but we'll be changing them in the program. And then find the maximum adults and children allowed in that many tickets. So if the user says 3 family tickets, as per this rule, you are allowed up to 2 adults and 3 children. All right, so if you go for 2 family tickets, 2 into 2 is 4 adults and 2 into 3 is 6 children. So these are the maximum number allowed. So you have to calculate that and then find their sum. You simply find their sum. This is exactly what I'm doing here. I am asking the user to enter family tickets that they need. Then I'm incrementing that many family tickets into my array of type counts, which is corresponding to the index of family tickets. Then I'm finding the maximum number of children and adults allowed. I'm printing them. I'm asking the user to input them in integer forms. Then I'm simply adding them up. Now here I'm checking if the adult count is greater than max or child count is greater than the total or the maximum number of children allowed. Then you're going to ask the user to input the values again. These are just validation checks and they're very important. All right, because let's say if the user says they're going for 2 family tickets which allows up to 4 adults and 6 children. So what if the user enters 10 adults? This won't be allowed. So this validation check is extremely important. Similarly, if the user goes for option 4, which is of a group, this one. So if the user goes for a group of 6 or more, here you're going to ask the user again to enter adult child count. Now, if you look at the question, there is no such information required because it says price per person. There is no discrimination between an adult or a child ticket. But why do we do this in the program? Because if the user buys a group ticket, I have to calculate the price for the family tickets. And if the user buys family tickets, I still have to calculate the equivalent price for the group ticket. So this is what I'm doing here. Even if the user goes for a group where there is no differentiation between a child and an adult ticket because there is simply just a fixed price per person, I am going to ask the user regardless of that how many adults and children are they bringing, and if the total count is less than 6, again group of 6, so this is the lower bound. If they are less than 6, then I'm going to simply ask the user to enter the children count, senior count and adults count again, and then I'll find the total updated count, and then I'll just simply add that many total count into the third index of my type count array. Now what is corresponding to the third index? Third index is pointing towards the family, right? Family tickets. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So third index is pointing towards that how many family tickets have been bought yet. So again, even if the user goes for a group ticket, I have to update the family count as well to calculate the alternative price. Now why am I dividing total count by 5? Because in one family ticket up to maximum of 5 people are allowed, 2 adults or seniors and 3 children. So I'm dividing it by 5 to get the total count of family tickets that would be needed for n number of people, and simply adding that value into the type counts array index 3, which is corresponding to family ticket. And if none of these are true, I'll just simply print an error that you have to select an option between 0 and 4. I hope everything's clear so far. So yes, this was the logic for it. For index 4, ask the user to enter the total count, and if the count is less than 6, you ask the user to enter them again, and then you calculate how many tickets are needed for a family by dividing it by 5. Now this was the whole logic for asking the user to input the types of tickets that they need. In the next part, we are going to make the logic for asking the user to enter extra attractions. Now first of all, extra attractions are choice. Okay, they're optional. The user has to be given a choice if they want it or not. And this is what I'm doing here. I'll ask the user to enter 1 for extra and 0 for if they not. So there's no set rule that you have to use 1 or 0. You can use any option that you like. All right. So I'm saying if extra is equal to 1, that means the user agrees. Then you have to validate the options for day 1. Now if you look at the pre-release material, for day 1 only line feeding and penguin feeding are allowed, not evening barbecue. So you have to ask the user to enter values between 0, 1 or 2. 0 would correspond to line, 1 for penguin feeding, 2 for barbecue. Again, if you look at the attractions, 0 index corresponds to line feeding, 1 for penguin feeding, 2 for barbecue. 0th index of attraction cost is the price of line feeding. Index 1 is penguin feeding, index 2 is barbecue. And then 0th index of attraction count is the count of how many people got line feeding. First index is how many people got penguin feeding, and second index is how many people got barbecue. So you get the you get the pattern. So for every array and the choice that the user inputs, I am directly mapping it to the index of my array. That is why I'm starting the user choices from 0. So it's directly mappable. You won't have to think otherwise. All right. So looking at the logic now, once the user selects between 0, 1, and 2, I am going to ask the user if the ticket option was 3, which would be previously saved in a variable, right? From the above code, whether user went for family or group. Now, what is the need here? So you need to understand that if the user went for family, I still need to find out the total number of people that would go for the extra attraction in order to give the alternative price, right? So I'm saying multiply the total count of people with the selected extra and update the attraction count ATT choice with that, whatever that. Now what is ATT choice variable? It is simply a variable that is asking the user to input a number between 0, 1, and 2. 0 being line feeding, 1 being penguin feeding, and 2 being barbecue. Alright. So this is what I'm doing here. Now if the user enters, if the previous ticket count was equal to 3, so this is just validation. You can just read the code and understand it on your own. In day count 2, I'm just checking if the choice that the user selects is less than 0 or more than 2. So you are going to print an error message and ask the user to input again. Now if the input was actually 3, which means the user went for a family ticket, I am getting the total count. Again, I need to find the alternative price for the group ticket. And for the group ticket, I need the total count. So if you look at the code above for family, here is the total count that I calculated by adding adult and children count, right? So I'm just simply multiplying it with whatever the attraction choice user selected. So let's say user went for penguin feeding. Now penguin feeding, that is on index 1, so the user must have entered 1. So what I'm doing here is I am simply multiplying the cost which I'm getting by attraction cost index 1 corresponding to the penguin feeding's price, right? And then I'm multiplying it by whatever the count is. So let's say if the user got, let's say 3 family tickets, so I'm simply multiplying with that. All right, so I'm multiplying this count with the number of total people. So sorry, I'm multiplying the attraction price, the price of one attraction with the total number of attractions that were bought, which would be saved in this array. So let's say if there were 10 adults and all of them went for the attraction, so this would cost you $20, right? So undoing the changes and going back. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm simply adding the total count, multiplying the total count with the selected choice, whatever the cost is, $2, $3, $2.5. And once I have that, I am adding the total count into the attraction counts array. Now, again, as I explained you above, if there are 10 adults and all of them went for penguin feeding, so I'm simply incrementing the attraction counts index 1, which is corresponding to penguin feeding, with the count that actually bought penguin feeding. So I'll change this to 10. Now, what is this signifying? Let's actually look at it. This means that penguin feeding is costing you $2 and 10 people actually went for penguin feeding. So 10 into 2 is $20. This means a total of $20 has been spent on extra attractions. All right. And if the choice was not 3, which means it was 4, because we are checking for 1, 2, 3 already. So else means 4 here. Now what happens if the user went for a group ticket? So if the user went for a group ticket, now I also have to find the extra cost based for the family. So here I'm checking whatever the user entered. Well, not necessarily family. It could be an adult. It could be a senior. It could be a child. Okay. Again, they could be individuals. So whatever the count is that the user currently put into the system, you are multiplying it with the relevant cost. So if I go down and I show you here, so I bought the ticket for 5 adults, and then I inputted penguin feeding for all of them by selecting option 1. So 5 adults, and then 5 of them got penguin feeding, and the penguin feeding costs you $2. So this is what I'm doing here. Whatever the user selects, okay, so whatever the user selects, the total count of that ticket multiplied by whatever the choice user selected. So these variables that you see, these are the indices that the user entered, 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 in case of ticket input, and 0 or 1 or 2 in case of attraction, 0 being line feeding, 1 being penguin, and 2 being barbecue. Once you have the extras cost calculated, you're doing the same thing. You're adding that many count into the relevant index of the attraction count array, which is simply keeping a track of the total count of people which bought a certain attraction. So if the attraction choice user entered 1, that is penguin feeding, and let's say the type count is corresponding to 0. Now what does this mean? You add this many, so 0 is corresponding to adult, so you add this many adults into the attraction count index 1 and update that. So let's say since I added 5 adults in the program execution, I can substitute it with 5, and then attraction count was initially, so attraction count 1, I think it was initially 0, we did not, this was the first attempt of the program, yes. So index 1, it has 10, alright, let's say the 10 is already saved there, so we'll return 10 here, we'll return 10 here, and then 10 plus 5 becomes 15. So you simply update the first index of this program to 15. See? So now it shows that previously there were 10 people who had bought penguin feeding, but now with 5 more adults, the count is revised to 15. I'll simply change it back to 0 now. And going back now and resuming, I'll also undo these. Alright, perfect. So these variables are nothing except whatever the user enters, they are mapping directly to the array index. Now if the user does not select any extra, so I'm simply setting extra cost equal to 0. The reason being, if I don't set it equal to 0, then I'm also using extra cost in the next step. Then it would give you this error that extra cost was not declared before. Alright. So now for the next logic, ticket price calculation. If the day is equal to 1, then you are going to simply multiply the total count of whatever the ticket type user selected with the day 1 cost and add the extra cost to it. And if the day 2 was selected, then you multiply the total count of that certain ticket type with day 2's cost and add the extra cost. So here what I'm doing is I'm going for the type count, whatever the user has selected. So if the user entered 0, this means return me the type counts of adults. So there were 5 adults initially into day cost of index 0. Again, 0 was ticket input. So both of them are going to be replaced with 0. So 0, 0. And then the type count on index 0 was 5 adults, because again this is where I'm getting the 5 from when I run the program. And then the cost of one adult's ticket was actually set to 20. So you get 20 here. Now 5 into 20 is 100. So this is substituted by 100 plus extras cost. Extras cost was calculated since I went for simple 5 adult tickets, then the ticket input was equal to 0, not 3. So here I selected 5. Again, ticket input was 0, and attraction choice I went for penguin feeding, so I entered 1 for that. The penguin feeding costs us, I think, $2, right? So here it's replaced by 2, and the type count index 5 was index 0 was replaced by 5 because we entered 5 adults. So the extra cost became $10. So here it is replaced by 10, and then the cost becomes 110, and this is exactly what happened here. See, so you actually need to run the program on your own, and also dry run the program on a piece of paper to further understand what exactly is going on using the indices that I've shared. And if the day count is not equal to 1, so day count I'm referring to this that you entered in the start. Here, enter day 1 or day 2 for booking because they have different costs. Day 2 is more expensive. So if the day 2 was entered, you are simply I just copy pasted this line literally because the logic is the same, and then simply just change the day 1 cost to day 2 cost. And where is this day 2 cost coming from? This is again an array that I have declared in the start with the cost. So this is a day 2 cost. By the way, very important thing, you won't be asked to declare these arrays in the exam question. Okay, you would assume that the arrays are already declared, they're already initialized. You are just going to use them by writing their name and the relevant index that you want to access. All right, and in the end, you are simply going to add the ticket price with the current total. Now this line is very important. Basically, the concept of totaling is happening here. Total is equal to total plus value. Because we're inside a loop, so I want to keep on adding the prices of the tickets instead of overwriting them. So let's say I got tickets for 5 adults with penguin feeding. It cost me 110. So let's say I want to book another ticket. So the same person is going to book another ticket. It's not a new booking. And I enter pre-booking for, let's say, 4th day, and I go for 1 booking, and now I go for, let's say, 1 senior. So 1 senior costs me $16 for day 1. And once I enter, I am not going to go for any attractions now. Technically, what should happen, that whatever the current total ticket price was, 16 should get added to it, right? Instead of you printing 16 on the screen, because again, this is one person who is getting multiple tickets at the same time. So it indeed shows you $126 here. And if we do not use the totaling concept here, if I directly print the ticket price, if I directly print the current total here, it would have overwritten the prices of the previous tickets. So this is very important that you keep on adding the current price into the previous bookings that have been made by the same user. All right, this is the totaling concept that is very essential and also a very often repeated concept in your past papers. I'm simply printing the ticket price, and now this is the last, absolutely last part of our pre-release material. So what we have to do again, if the user went for a family ticket, you have to print the corresponding group ticket price. And if the user went for group ticket, you have to print the corresponding family ticket price. I'll stop the program and I'll run it again. And we'll look at the logic meanwhile. So if the ticket input is 3 or 4, we're just checking that it's either one of them. And then I'm checking if the input was actually 3, which means family, then you calculate the alternate price for the 4th index of your arrays. So basically all the arrays with the 4th index, that was reserved for the group, and 3rd index was reserved for family. So this is what we're doing here. Now I'll show you. Index 1, and we book for day 2, 1 day booking. I say I am going to go for a group of 10 people, and I would have, so let's go with the pre-release material example. It says 4 adults and 6 children. So I have 4 adults and I have 6 children here, and I don't want any extras. See what's happening here? It's printing me the current ticket price for a group, and then it's also calculating the price for a family ticket, right? For n family tickets actually. And this is what exactly I'm doing here. If the user went for, since I went for the group by default, I am also calculating the price of the 3rd index of my array. Type count 3 was corresponding to the total number of family tickets that the user got. I simply multiplied by the relevant cost of family ticket on 1 day, so which is $60, and then I add the extras cost, how many extras the user got, and then I print it as alternate cost. Similarly, if the user actually went for the family ticket, I am simply accessing the 4th index of my arrays, which corresponds to group. So I'm calculating how many total people uh, were there in one group, and then I'm multiplying the sum with the relevant cost. So group cost is n into 15. N means how many people. So because it's price per person, whereas family ticket is one fixed price as a whole, not per person. And then I'm printing that. And then I'm asking the user to accept if they want to uh, go for the alternate price. And if the user accepts or not, it's up to them. So they can choose whatever they want to do. And if I print -1 here, the program simply ends and it prints the summary. So I went for 10 adults, 10 line feeding, and then there were 2 family tickets that were bought. They were not really bought, but because we went for a group of 10 people, so we actually had to calculate the alternative for the family as well. So that is why it's there. And then at the end, I'm simply asking the user to input the value again if they want to repeat. And if they don't want to repeat, you are simply printing the arrays. By the way, this is Python. You cannot print arrays like this in pseudocode. And once again, by default, you would be asked in the exam to write pseudocode, but there could be an option of writing Python. So you must be absolutely comfortable in writing pseudocode, and you must know the exact syntax and uh, the format. All right, so this is everything related to pre-release material. We have not discussed the exact specific possible questions that would come in the exams, but if you do this pre-release material well, if you understand the pseudocode, if you understand the Python code, then basically you can solve any question that comes your way. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you understood everything that was to be covered in this pre-release material. Good luck for the exam, and I hope you get a wonderful grade.